Hi everybody, I'm sending you a video from my backyard. There's a rainstorm coming in, so I hope I can do this rather quickly. But I wanted to say, first of all, and you might see the dogs in the background, I hope you do. I wanted to say Happy Easter, and I think it comes up backwards when I'm doing a video, but Happy Easter to everybody. And I am going to read you a chapter of James and the Giant Peach, and I hope you like it. It's a very short chapter, so you shouldn't have to be on very long. I need to put my glasses on for it. And it's James and the Giant Peach. It is by Roald Dahl, and I learned in school that anytime you are going to read a book, you need to say who wrote it. I also looked and realized he's from Canada, and he wrote this in 1961, so I was 3 years old. So that is a picture of James, and then the book is James and the Giant Peach. So shall we get started? And there's a bee there. The book is for Olivia and Tessa. I don't know who they are. And here is the first chapter. And like I said, it's very short, and I might read two because they're only a couple pages long. It says, here is James Henry Trotter when he was about 4 years old. Up until this time, he had had a happy life, living peacefully with his mother and father in a beautiful house beside the sea. There were always plenty of other children for him to play with, and there was the sandy beach for him to run about on, and the ocean to paddle in. It was the perfect life for a small boy. Then, one day, James' mother and father went to London to do some shopping, and there a terrible thing happened. Both of them suddenly got eaten up, in full daylight, mind you, on a crowded street, by an enormous, angry rhinoceros who had escaped from the London Zoo. Now this, as you can well imagine, was a rather nasty experience for two such gentle parents. But in the long run, it was far nastier for James than it was for them. They were dead and gone in 35 seconds flat. Poor James, on the other hand, was still very much alive, and all at once he found himself alone and frightened in a vastly unfriendly world. The lovely house by the seaside had to be sold immediately, and the little boy, carrying nothing but a small suitcase containing a pair of pajamas, a toothbrush, was sent away to live with his two aunts. Their names were Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker, and I am sorry to say they were both really horrible people. They were selfish and lazy and cruel, and right from the beginning they started beating poor James for almost no reason at all. They never called him by his real name, but always referred to him as "you disgusting little beast," or "you filthy nuisance," or "you miserable creature." And they certainly never gave him any toys to play with or any picture books to look at. His room was as bare as a prison cell. So here is a picture of where James had to go to live, which is very sad. They lived, Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spiker, and now James as well, in a queer ramshackle house on top of a high hill in the south of England. The hill was so high that from almost anywhere in the garden, James could look down and see for miles and miles across a marvelous landscape of woods and fields. And on a very clear day, if he looked in the right direction, he could see a tiny gray dot far away on the horizon, which was the house that he used to live in with his beloved mother and father. And just beyond that, he could see the ocean itself, and a long, thin streak of blackish blue, a line of ink beneath the rim of the sky. But James was never allowed to go down off the top of that hill. Neither Aunt Sponge nor Aunt Spiker could ever be bothered to take him out herself, not even for a small walk or a picnic, and he certainly wasn't permitted to go alone. The nasty little beast will only get into mischief if he goes out of the garden, Aunt Spiker had said, and terrible punishments will promise him, such as being locked in the cellar with the rats for a week, if he even so much as dared climb over the fence. The garden, which covered the whole top of the hill, was large and desolate, and the only tree in the entire place, apart from a clump of dirty old laurel bushes at the far end, was an ancient peach tree that never gave any peaches. There was no swing, no seesaw, no sandpit. No other children were ever invited to come up on the hill to play with poor James. There wasn't so much as a dog or a cat around to keep him company. And as time went on, he became sadder and sadder and more lonely. And he used to spend hours every day standing at the bottom of the garden, gazing wistfully at the lovely but forbidden world of woods and fields and ocean that was spread out below him like a magic carpet. Should I go on for chapter number 2? I think we will. Here is James Trotter after he had been living with his aunts for 3 whole years, which is when this story really begins. So there is James, 3 years later, and he looks so sad. For now, there came a morning when something rather peculiar happened to him, and this thing, which, as I said, was only rather peculiar, soon caused a second thing to happen, which was very peculiar. And then the very peculiar thing, in its own turn, caused a really fantastically peculiar thing to occur. It all started on a blazing hot day in the middle of the summer. Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spiker, and James were all out in the garden, and James had been put to work as usual. This time he was chopping wood for the kitchen stove. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were sitting comfortably in the deck chairs nearby, sipping tall glasses of fizzy lemonade and watching him to see that he didn't stop work for one moment. Aunt Sponge was enormously fat and very short. She had small piggy eyes, a sunken mouth, and one of those white flabby faces that looked exactly as though it had been